Hello there. It is 6:45 p.m. on Wednesday, the 11th of March, and we got some rain in the forecast, y'all. Maybe a little bit of wind too going on. Is that better? Yeah, that is better. So yeah, possibly I've heard now a lot of reports, they say, I know that the old joke is, I'll alter it so that it's more charismatic, but two people, three opinions kind of a situation. Anytime there's like a weather event or even the threat of a weather event or even just the threat of a weather event, as often seems like is the case on the AT, you hear a lot of different reports from people. So I've heard so far that there could be hail tonight. I've heard that there could be snow tomorrow. I've heard that there could be 60-mile-an-hour gusts, which seems unlikely, but I have chosen a camp spot where my tent is somewhat protected. If there is hail, I've got like some little baby trees above my tent that hopefully can dissuade it from falling directly onto me. There's like a little bit of a log behind my tent that could be a windbreak. I think if I had to take a guess, I am facing east. Right? Would that be right? Yeah, if the trail is north. So the wind will be at my back if that's the case, which I guess I could look up at the trees and it kind of looks like that is true. But yeah, we'll see. I have no idea, It is about to take a bit of a plunge in terms of the temperature. I saw that, I think Tuesday or something like that, it's supposed to be 19 degrees or something. At this rate, I will be in the Smokies for that, which have a reputation of being particularly, crazy in certain times of the year. So we'll see. I've never really had like a crazy Smokies experience, but people do be talking about it though. But man, yeah, what a day. A great day. Really the kind of day that I think is like the best. Like, honestly, if I could, I would go into town every single day. That would be awesome. Like, people talk about how it's more expensive, but I think it really only is more expensive if you go to restaurants. Because the way I see it, if you went into town every single day and you did a resupply, you're going to spend the same amount of money that you would have spent for the next resupply that you didn't go into town for. So you would have more resupplies more often, but they would be lower price because they'd be more frequent. I don't know. I just think that like towns are awesome, especially when you're doing stuff like this. It's just a nice little respite. So, in any case, I woke up this morning pretty much at like 7 a.m. on the dot, which I was kind of happy about. I appreciated my body. Thank you, body. What did they call it? Chiasmatic reticulum or something like that. But basically, like your internal clock. I like that when I know that I actually need to wake up at a certain time, my body will usually do it. Like I have not set an alarm while I've been out here. Most of the time I just first of all, I don't want to do that. Second of all, it could possibly be rude. I've slept close enough to some people where I didn't want to be the person whose phone was going off at 6:30 in the morning or whatever. I'll let other people do that. But yeah, so I woke up at 6 and I was like, okay, 7, felt like 6, it was still dark, and kind of did some morning needfuls. I ended up having a cup of coffee while I was there because I was like, I'm not going to hike in the dark and the sun's not going to rise for another 55 minutes. So I'll just kind of rearrange my thought about how I'm going to spend my morning. I'm not going to have coffee at the Winding Stair Gap pickup point. I'll have coffee now, and that'll help me get down the trail. And so, it was nice. Opened up my little fly and got to watch the sunrise a little bit from the periphery. I guess I'll be able to watch the sunrise tomorrow morning to whatever degree it will, depending on what the weather's like. Again, it's not even really so much that that people are necessarily right or wrong about the prediction. It's just like the Appalachian Trail. The weather can vary a lot, even just depending on what side of the mountain you're on, And so for me personally, I'm trying to determine where my exact location is. I am at mile 125.4. and I am at 4,921 feet. Not an advisable place to be if you're going to be encountering possible wind and, wintry weather. But it is what it is, and as they say, it could always be worse. I could have gone up to the campsite that I was actually aiming for initially before I saw where I am now. I should take a picture because it's a nice little spot. There we go. And yeah, original spot was at 4,999 feet. So, I'll have some dividends there. I don't know how much colder it'll get here. I can check some other things, but it doesn't really matter. But this morning, as I sat in my tent, I was surprised to see two hikers go by me, pre-dawn hiking with headlamps and stuff. And I was like, man, y'all are some overachievers. But hey, I doffed my cap to thee, because better you than me. Someone's got to do it, and it ain't gonna be me. I'll wait like a reasonable human being. I'll wait for the conditions to improve a bit. I don't want to use my headlamp unnecessarily. But hey, they say hike your own hike, and I respect those dudes for being out there. The first guy who went by, I was like, "What's up, my dude?" And he was like, "Living the dream." And I was like, "I bet you are." And it was nice, And then another guy came by, and similar kind of quick interaction. But yeah, packed up all my stuff pretty quickly, hit the road. I had a date. It was about 2.5 miles for me to get from my campsite to Winding Stair Gap. And it was a nice little hike, It was there anything in particular about it that I thought was interesting? I mean, there's a lot of downhill, as, again, going to road crossings typically are. Again, you got to go down, and then you got to go up. It was just pleasant, I got to Winding Stair Gap, and one of the guys who had passed me in the morning, his name is Tony. Shout out to Tony, aka Rescue. This guy had a pretty cool trail name origin story. Basically, if I understood correctly, Tony/Rescue, if you ever hear this and I got the details wrong, I've always heard that you should never let the truth get in the way of a good story, so I'm just going to tell it how I remember you saying it. But basically, there was some period of time where he wasn't able to check in with his family using a cell phone, and so I guess his family had decided that they needed to send out like a rescue unit to go find him. And so all of a sudden, at some point in his hike so far, he came over, he was going to another road crossing, and at the bottom of this road crossing was like the fire department, the rescue team for the mountains, whoever those people are, Forest Service agents, I don't even know. But I was like, oh man, that's like, what a unfortunate situation, Just like a really unfortunate use of resources unnecessarily. So he's going to be getting a Garmin InReach pretty soon, so he'll be able to contact his family even when cell phones don't have service and stuff like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed talking to him. Mom, shout out to my parents, and he was from Indiana. He was from Franklin, Indiana, and so I can't exactly remember where he said that was, but I don't think that he was familiar with North Manchester. I did ask, and I don't remember him saying yes to that. But, it was cool to talk about some Indiana stuff and some trail stuff. And he was a retired, if I get this wrong, does it make sense for someone to be in the Navy Air Force? Probably not. But there is like a Naval Air Force, I would think. I don't know. The point is, he had lived in Okinawa for like many, many years. And, we had a little bit of crossover there. I was able to ask him if he spoke Kidomo no Nihongo, which is child's Japanese, and he basically did. That's where I feel like my level of proficiency or lack thereof is. Like, I think I can basically speak like a child who also drinks beer, because that's one of the things that I know how to say. I know how to say, "Where's the toilet?" Toire no doko de... Oh my god, maybe I don't. I could say enough words. Doko desu ka means like, where is it? So tori wa, and biru onegaishimasu would be like, beer please. And kudomo no nihongo dake means like, well, how do you say speak? I don't know. I probably shouldn't be thinking about this. I'll think about it later. I'll talk to AI about it. But anyway, yeah, that was great. I enjoyed hanging out with Rescue, and there was a part of me this morning that spent maybe 30 minutes concerned. I think that maybe a mouse got into my general camping area last night and was chewing on some of my Zen pouches. Some of them seemed like they had been pulled through the mesh that I keep them in once they're discarded, and it seemed like they had been chewed through. And I'm not entirely sure if I'm just making that up, because that the first thought that I had when I looked at it was like, oh my god, like a mouse did that. And it's crazy because like I try to think of myself as someone who is like aware of my surroundings, and the idea that a mouse was that close to my tent is not something I like to think about. So when I got to Winding Stair Gap and was having this conversation with Rescue, I took all of the stuff out of my backpack, because one of my worst fears would be having a mouse that I accidentally like packed up in all of my stuff, and then having a dead mouse at the end of the day kind of flop out, and just knowing that like, it had just been languishing and overheating and suffocating in all of my stuff. I was like, man, I really, really don't want that to happen. So I did a pretty good little quick, just a dump of all my stuff, and then the shuttle came like about 9:15, and there were quite a few hikers on it, and yeah, we all just kind of sat on the shuttle until 9:30, just kind of talking and joking and stuff like that, and it was a good time. It was like, those are the things that are really fun about the Appalachian Trail. And I didn't know, at least as of yesterday, I thought the shuttle was like a $5 fee, but it was actually free, which is amazing. That's a really, really good service. Anyone who's listening who might be on trail right now, when you get to Winding Stair Gap, it is definitely worth looking into if you can time it to meet up with the shuttle. And for me, it was a pretty perfect timing, because I think I got to the gap at like 9 o'clock, and then I did my feverish pack unload, and then basically was able to put everything back together before the shuttle got there and then left. But yeah, it was fun. The shuttle dropped me off at Ingalls, and I was able to do a pretty quick and perhaps I did a resupply there while I was at Ingalls. I was meeting with a friend. Shout out to John. What's up, John? And he was coming out to take me to breakfast, which again, I greatly appreciate. Breakfast is my favorite meal, and I was very excited to have that time with John this morning. So very quickly went through Ingalls and got everything that I needed. Managed to charge my phone while I was doing all of my needfuls, my resupply needfuls, and it was a good time. Pretty basic, everything you'd expect. Got a bunch of tuna, got some almonds. Didn't get any more mayonnaise, but I'm kind of regretting that at this point. I think mayonnaise is pretty good on all this tuna. But yeah, got all that stuff for everything that I would need to get me to the Nantahala Outdoor Center, which actually I'll get there tomorrow. So again, I think I overestimated how much food I would need. I'm still kind of, I don't know. I'm hearing some kind of a sound. It sounds like air being let out of a pressurized vessel. But yeah, better to have too much food than too little. Sort of. I think I'll probably have a little bit of a feast tonight, just to kind of lessen the load a little bit. I certainly don't need to be carrying extra food if I'm also planning on resupplying tomorrow, which I am. So yeah, hung out at Ingalls briefly, and then John arrived, and I was kind of just quickly packing up all my stuff, and John and I went to a restaurant called Country Kitchen, which was really, really good breakfast stuff. Dad, shout out to my dad and my parents, and to you, dear listener. Country Kitchen in Franklin is a really good breakfast spot. I don't mean to cast any kind of disparaging remarks, but I do think it's better than Veronica's. The portions seemed just bigger, which for me, I have to say, with my block philosophy of nutrition, just going to increasing your health bar, quantity is more important than quality. I'd rather have 12 eggs that taste like just nothing than, I don't know. I don't even know if Michelin star restaurants do breakfast, do they? That's an AI question for sure. So, from Ingalls, John and I went to that restaurant, had a great little talk, and just enjoyed the camaraderie of being together, and I was able to charge my phone as well at the restaurant. So I was like sitting pretty. I think by the time John and I were done eating, my phone was at like 96% or something like that. So I basically got to do a free charge, bring it back up as close to 100% as possible. And I plan for sure to spend a pretty sizable amount of time tomorrow at the Nantahala Outdoor Center and really bask, especially if the weather is bad, bask in all of the finery of its offerings. I think I'm only about 10 miles away from it, which is really crazy. Again, I overshot. I guess I'm closer to maybe mile 137. So yeah, I'm like 12 miles away. So that'll be kind of where I'm planning on having my first break. Well, that's a long walk. That's like a 4-hour walk. But I could eat a huge breakfast. I can eat a bunch of tuna. So we'll see how that all shakes out. I'm not entirely sure, but I definitely plan on walking as straight to there as possible. But I'm not sure also, do you go straight into the Smokies from there? I kind of feel like you do, but maybe you don't. I guess you have to go to Fontana first, right? Okay, yeah, so from the beginning of the Smokies, I am currently 41 miles from the Smoky beginnings. Okay, so yeah, I won't be there for another couple days. But yeah, hanging out with John was great. Really enjoyed that. And he took me all the way back to the trail, which was great. And I was able to very quickly jump back on. So I got back on trail pretty much right at noon, and then pretty much walked until I got to where I am now. I wanted to do about 15 miles, in order to like satisfy, well, I guess again, I probably have more food than I need to, but today was kind of, I mean, can you call it a Nero if it was like, I mean, how many miles did I do today? Let me see. This is worth looking into, and I'll try to be charismatic while I talk about it. So this morning I did, oh man, come on Strava, work with me here. This morning I did 2.53 miles in order to get to Winding Stair Gap, so I'm going to pull out my calculator and we can actually do the math together, because I don't know, it feels like a Mr. Rogers kind of thing. Then I did 16.49 miles starting at 12:09, so 16.49. So I did 19 miles today, which I'm very satisfied with. That's basically right at, that not doing 20 miles again. I don't want to be obsessed with like mileage. That doesn't help anybody, but I do want to be consistent with like approximately where I want to be on any given day. And 19 miles, that's perfectly well and good, all things considered, especially considering that I spent 3 hours in town, which could have been another 9 miles. So could have done a 30-mile day today, all things considered, but I'm glad that I didn't. I don't think my body's quite ready for that kind of commitment, but it's fair enough. And so, yeah, got back to Winding Stair Gap and then walked all the way to Seiler Bald and met up with a guy, shout out to Gage, walked with this guy named Gage for about 6 miles, I think, and just chatted the whole time. It is nice to walk with people and have like conversations. It makes the miles go by very, very quickly. And during the walk with Gage, I actually ran into all of the trail maintenance people who I have been working with the Nantahala Outdoor Center trail maintenance crew. And that was awesome. So, shout out to all of the people who I saw: Heige, Paul, Ed, I don't think Bill was there, Rich. I mean, all of the main characters that have been, Victor, huge parts of the time that I spent with that club doing trail maintenance. It was just really fun to run into them. Couldn't spend a lot of time, but it was nice to spend time with the people that I could. So that was great. A little morale boost, joking and talking about privy cleaning and stuff like that, just good times. And yeah, Gage and I walked all the way. We went by the Wyabald Tower, which was cool. That I had a little bit of a snack there because I knew I still needed to do, like, I don't know, 6 miles. Was it 6 miles? Phew. Yeah, I think it was 5.7 or something like that. So yeah, hung out with Gage for quite a while. Just had a very large swath of conversation topics, and it was a good time. So yeah, shout out to you, Gage. Thank you for that additional camaraderie. I guess today was just a very social day on trail. But yeah, Gage got off at Wyabald Shelter, and then I had about, I don't know, 3.7 or 4.1 miles to get to where I am now. And again, I'm trying to set myself up for success and trying to, I don't know what to call what I'm doing yet. But yeah, the 20-mile marker, generally speaking, that feels right for me. That seems to occupy the right amount of time every single day, where I feel like by the time I finally get to camp, it's been a day well spent and time well spent. And so last, I don't know, 5 or so miles, I was by myself again, and yeah, just walked and listened to an Andrew Huberman episode about immunology and specifically cancer treatments with advanced immunology. So going over things like how CRISPR works, Yamanaka factors, what else that was interesting, like I don't know. It kind of just washed over me. I didn't really feel like I got like a lot of practical, actionable information. It was just like listening to two people who have a lot more experience and knowledge on something that I only peripherally understand. Like I'm definitely not a big fan of cancer at all, and so listening to them talk about like the state, the bleeding edge of the science of cancer treatment and things like that was certainly interesting. They went over all the stuff that you can imagine: chemotherapy, ketogenic diets, using viruses to deliver certain types of proteins that would flag cancer cells so that the innate immune system would recognize foreign cells. Honestly, listening to it though, I did have the sense that I was like listening to cavemen just say ugh ugh kind of thing. Like I was like, this is still like so unimpressive. Like humanity, we've done a really good job considering the lowly stamp of our origins, to quote Charles Darwin. But the body. Again, I don't remember if Peter Diamandis said that it was 100 million or 10 billion, or I don't know how many chemical reactions are occurring inside a human body at any given moment, but it is an astronomical amount. And our brute force ways of addressing biological mishaps is sorely lacking in specificity and surgical accuracy. And so even listening to some of the amazing things that people are doing with things like CRISPR and mRNA vaccines and using viruses for targeted treatment for things that are like autoimmune conditions and or cancer, I'm just like, there are so many variables within the body that human beings can just simply not grasp all of the consequences and downstream effects of the things that we do. Like we really, really need AI to step in order to be able to hold all of the context of the biological system, in order to see the systemic effects of treatments, not only in the specific and intended application, but also, again, in the total way that they affect the human body. I think that we've made again, amazing strides for a primate species that would otherwise just be picking its butt and, climbing trees to get away from tigers. But yeah, like, again, I really hope that 2026 is like the year of the first great discovery, that AI can make like something where, there's like this undeniable thing that kind of just bubbles up from all of these frontier AI models that allows for medicine specifically to move forward in a way that is like leaps and bounds beyond what human beings could do, even if we studied these things for another 100 years. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, is pretty fond of saying that, as he looks into what the future will be in the next 10 years, he thinks that we will basically make 100 years of progress within the next 10 years. It'll be like the Industrial Revolution happening within a decade instead of 100 years, And I have a lot of faith in that because, again, I had my own road to Damascus moment with AI where I realized the power, even for, a relatively unenlightened and incapable person like myself, when I was able to start coding stuff just using conversational English. I was like, wow, if someone who was at the, again, cutting edge of their field had access to this and they were able to give it the proper context for the problems that they're trying to solve, they would be able to solve those problems in a way that no single human being or a group of human beings could do, even if they had 50 years to look at the problem. It's just very exciting to me anyway. And so, yeah, that was how I spent like the last little bit of my walk, just thinking about those kinds of things. And I did make some notes. Sorry. Let's see what I got. I got my future ideas note. I don't need to talk about that. I've got my to-do list. Y'all don't need to know about that. Okay, well, let's do this so that it's a little interactive. So one of the questions I had when I was walking to Winding Stair Gap this morning, I was like, what was the first tool that humanity ever created? Now, I don't think that we have a definitive answer about that, but just speaking probabilistically, like, what do archaeologists think were like the first thing that we ever made? Was it clothing? Tools. If you're liberal with your definition of what a tool is, then the question kind of like has a lot of possible answers. As I was thinking about it when I was walking, I thought maybe clothing would be one of the first like tools ever used, but I'm not entirely sure. So what was the first tool humanity likely ever produced? I'm asking AI. Let's see what it says. To answer this, we have to go back 2.6 to 3.3 million years, long before Homo sapiens ever entered the scene. Since you've asked me to keep a critical eye on the validity of your content, it's important to note that first is a moving target in archaeology. For decades, we pointed to one specific industry, but recent discoveries have pushed the timeline back significantly. Okay, number one, the Lomkian tool, 3.3 million years ago. Until recently, the Oldowan toolkit was king. However, in 2015, researchers in Kenya discovered the Lomkian tools. The tools: large, heavy stone flakes and anvils. The significance: these predate the genus Homo. They were likely made by Australopithecus and Kenyanthropus, the Czech. These tools are relatively crude and were made by smashing stones against larger rocks, passive hammer technique, rather than more sophisticated knapping seen later. Let's see, do we want to keep going over this? I guess, does it say much about, like, the verdict? Okay, let's read this. While Lamecchian tool flakes are currently the oldest physical evidence we have. The true first tool was likely an unmodified stick or bone used as a lever or club, which the archaeological record simply cannot, quote-unquote, see. Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. I still think that we could go broader than that. If we naked apes were as naked as we might have been, seems like clothing would have been perhaps the first, but like some type of covering. But who knows? I guess not even AI. But yeah, that was like something that I thought about today. And another thing I thought about, because I was wondering about stuff, let me see. It had to do with the Smoky Mountains and wanting to know, like, if there was a way to, and I know that there's like not really a way to do this, but if you looked at the Smoky Mountains objectively, is there any kind of metric in order to determine its difficulty level as compared to other parts on the Appalachian Trail? And so I asked AI, and the scientific verdict was, if we define hard as total work equaling force times distance, I think that's what D stands for, the Smokies are objectively in the top 20% of the trail. They require more vertical work than 1,800 miles of the trail, but less technical / muscular strain than the 100 miles in New Hampshire. So, yeah, I just thought that was interesting because I was trying to wonder, like, you know, I've been kind of interested in, like, you know, defining the difficulty of the trail on like a regional basis. And to me, the Smokies are not like an easy part of the trail. You know, to me, the only, like, quote unquote, and it wasn't even easy, but the only easy part that I can even think of was like the Shenandoahs in Virginia. So, you know, the trail that kind of abuts the Skyline Drive road. But yeah, that was a fun little thing to look into. So thanks, AI. I love you. And yeah, so while I was listening to that Andrew Huberman episode about immunity, I kind of had this little fantasy where I was imagining that, like, you know, T cells are like one of the major immunocells that helps with your immune system. And I kind of, you know, again, if you go back to the bike ride chronicles across the country, I really do believe that information is like a fundamental particle, or maybe data, or somewhere between information and data is like a fundamental particle of existence, or a fundamental essence, or something like that. And, you know, communication between cells, I think, is probably something that's very hard for us to understand. It's like, you know, the language of whales and stuff like that. Like, there is active communication that is occurring in a meaningful way within a human body, within any complex multicellular organism, and within single cellular organisms. When the guest on the Huberman Lab podcast was talking about CRISPR, he was specifically talking about the origins of it, which included basically like looking at bacteria and figuring out how bacteria protected themselves from bacteriophagic viruses. And they did that by having this like specific, I think it was, was it mRNA? Doesn't really matter, but it had some part, the bacteria had this thing that would like basically go throughout the cell, and it would read the DNA, or DNA? Would it be DNA? I guess it would be. Yeah, DNA of like all of the pieces within the bacteria itself. And if it read something that kind of was an unknown quantity, and therefore possibly something from outside of the bacteria, like a virus, then it would cut that strand at that point and like basically just eject it from the bacteria itself. And within the human body, given that I believe that information and data is a fundamental particle of existence for pretty much everything, I can't help but think that when T cells would arrive at an area and see that their, coworkers basically had failed to neutralize a threat using some sort of mechanism to try to neutralize it, I feel like that they are possibly aware of what their coworker did and can possibly adapt their own behavior based on what is essentially a crime scene. So the way I was picturing it was like, let's imagine that T cells are being recruited throughout your body and produced in order to address and assess a threat. And so they go to the area where the concentration is the highest, and then they get there, and basically it's a massacre. Like the T cells have tried to do whatever the first responders were. They did their thing. They did as good of a job as they could, but it was unsuccessful. And there's evidence there of the lack of success. And again, I believe that failure is better than success because failure yields more data. And so the T cells that arrive later, I do think that they're able to discern, what happened, what tactics were used, and maybe even observe, in a certain sense, why they may have failed. I don't know if any of this is true, but for me, it just seems like it could be, which doesn't mean much, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. So yeah, man, that's pretty much my whole day. It was a good one. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I don't know what to expect, but I'm here for it, and it's going to be lit, as always. So, for now, I'll leave it there, and yeah, man, wish me luck. I've heard there's bears in this area, and it's supposed to snow tonight, so who even knows? We'll see what happens. Love you, bye.